This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody. We're here with the Mac and Jack Show. I am Jamie Pags, the Philly sports guy, filling in for Mac, along with Hall of Fame boxing writer Jack Hirsch. And we are broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and the Roku Northeast Streaming Sports Network. Morning, Jack.
Hey, good morning, Pags. We should have a little contest. Ask the viewers to guess what we were talking about right before we came on the air, what sport we were talking about, what specifically we were talking about, and we can give a clue, a hint. It had to do with fighting. Of course, everyone would guess boxing, so we wouldn't have to give out our McDonald's gift certificates to the winners.
No, I bet you we would probably still wind up holding that. And it's funny. Of course, I go what I call my living room, which is Dolan's Bar, because I don't watch TV at home. If I have to watch sport, I usually go. And I'm looking. I was telling people that I'm doing this show in the morning, and that I do it with a Hall of Fame boxing writer. And he says, "Oh, we should take a picture." And he shows me. He points over to the wall, and over on the wall we have a Sonny Liston, Cassius Clay poster of the fight that was happening in 1964, I guess is when it was.
The first one in Miami, the following year 65 in Lewiston, Maine.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it was in Miami, so that's what it said at the bottom. I was like, oh, I should take a picture of it and put it up there and see if you were. I was wondering if you were there at that fight.
No, I wasn't there at that fight. I'm not that old, Pags. That was 1964. To go down to Miami, I mean, come on. I know. But, it's hard to believe. We're not going to really talk about that fight long, but it's hard to believe. He was Cassius Clay then. He became Muhammad Ali soon after. It's hard to believe he was one of the biggest underdogs in boxing history, betting-wise. I mean, he was a 7-1 underdog going into that fight. Can you imagine that? You can put your money on Muhammad Ali and get 7-1 odds? That's insane.
And you wonder how many people actually did that. I mean, there was a reason why he was 7-1 odds, because everybody was putting it on Liston.
Well, there was a story. There was something like 50 boxing writers who were polled who they thought would win. And something like 49 of them picked Liston, but one of them did pick Clay. And he said, well, I don't really think he'll win, but if he does, I'll be famous. That was the logic.
There you go. And usually, and just like, with today, when you have these, media types all pick football teams, and when they always pick the one team, I immediately then have an interest in going and playing the other team and betting the other team, because usually when everybody picks one team, they're all wrong.
Who's more famous in Philly? Now you got me on a little bit of a kick, okay, boxing-wise. Smoking Joe Frazier or Rocky Balboa?
Well, I think Rocky would have to get more attention just because of the steps and the statue. However, I go into Xfinity Live, which is right across the street from the stadiums, and in that front door, you have to pass Joe Frazier, a statue of Joe Frazier. So it's, when you think of boxing, in Philly for real, you think of Joe Frazier.
I was at the fight of the century, March 8th, 1971. I sat in the last row to see Joe Frazier defeat Muhammad Ali. So I'm proud to say I was there.
So, and you know what, and I think about that, and of course they had two more fights after that. The other two, Ali won. Was it done? Did Ali win just because he had a better style? He was just more prepared, or like what were some of the things that happened that caused Joe Frazier to lose those fights?
You're talking about Sonny Liston and Muhammad Ali. I mean,
Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier against Muhammad Ali.
Well, Joe won the first fight. I mean, right. Ali won the next two. What happened? Smoking Joe was at his peak when he fought Ali the first fight. Ali was coming off a layoff, but he did have two fights in between. He wasn't a peak Ali, but it was still a very good Ali that Frazier went out. went up against, and Ali conceivably would have beaten every other heavyweight in history but Joe Frazier that particular night. Frazier put everything he had into that fight, and he was never the same again. The next two fights were close to rematch. Ali won a close but clear decision, and in the Thrilla in Manila, was one of those fights where it looked like Frazier was coming on in the middle rounds, who's going to stop Ali. The heat was torrid. Ali basically outlasted Frazier, and they stopped it at the end of the 14th round.
I got you. So but it was, Frazier had just his best fight really the first time against Ali, and he just couldn't match those.
No. He was 27 years old. After he beat Ali, he laid off a little while, and he was never the same. And then a couple of years later, he went up against the young George Foreman, and it was a stylistic nightmare for Frazier. Because Frazier would come forward, and he was made to order for Foreman. It just, even Joe Frazier told me years later, I had a chance to spend some private time with him when I interviewed him I was doing a book review for the book he wrote at the time in 1996. And I asked him who would have won between you or the first Ali fight when you were at your peak against the George Foreman who beat you for the title in Jamaica. He didn't answer at first. So I asked him a second time. He says, I don't think it would have made any difference what version of me showed up. So I said, was it a question of styles? He said, that's exactly what it was. So that was sporting of Frazier to say he thinks Foreman would have beaten the best of him. He would never give Ali that credit. He still thinks he beat Ali all three times. Well, he's until his death, of course.
Right. Yeah, and of course they did show that him and Ali were much closer friends than the media let on. That was something.
No, not really, Pax. I hate to say it. In 1996, at least 25 years after they fought, in private, he despised Ali. Ali. And I even said, look, what happens if Ali changes and he's truly sorry for the things he said about you, and he's just a changed person? And Joe's answer was now. Like he wasn't willing to admit like he could change. He maybe eased off on his feelings at the end a bit in later years, but there was a real hatred there for a while. Maybe not at the very end, but there were Ali's taunts, they dug too deep. I think, Ali would try to reach out and be very complimentary to Frazier over the years, but what Ali really needed to do was to fly to Philadelphia and ask to sit down with Joe one-on-one and talk and let him know how truly sorry he was. I think that would have done it, that would have taken the edge off it. But Ali would more or less be nice to Frazier publicly, okay, say all these nice things. And I think Frazier needed more. Let's face it, when you're called ugly and Uncle Tom, a gorilla, this and that, over and over and over, you got to put the same effort into showing remorse, that you did. And with Ali, a lot of it was a game, to a point. And part of it was because they were rivals in the ring. So you get hyped up and you say things. And Pax, just a couple of sorries don't wipe the slate clean most of the time.
Right. No, and I can understand that, especially Philadelphia mentality. I'm sure Frazier had it. It's just you're very prideful. You know what I mean? We're working class people. You want to make fun of us. Obviously, Frazier did not have the same panache that Ali had. So Ali was always a very fast talker, and Frazier just couldn't respond to stuff like that. So when you're trying to have a battle of wits, especially like on what would be like the equivalent to like a face-off of sorts, Frazier was never going to win that.
No, he couldn't match wits with Ali. I'll tell you, had Ali never became a boxer, he could have auditioned for a late night, talk show, because he was a naturally funny guy. He was like a comic. There was a lot of humor to Ali. And to Ali, things in general were like a joke, but he was a very serious guy as far as his religion goes and certain beliefs. Don't get me wrong, but Ali liked to joke around a lot. Like when he called Frazier those names, to Ali, most of the time, it was just like a big joke, having fun, like holding the toy gorilla, hitting it. This is Joe Frazier. He never stopped to think that he could really be hurting another guy's feelings and on what poor taste the remark was in. In quiet moments, Ali would have remorse about it. He'd feel, oh, I don't really mean to hurt him. I really love Joe Frazier. To me, it's just having fun. But if you're on the receiving end of it, it's not so much fun.
No, and I get that, and hey, listen, because it's very similar to the way that I do things today. Not that I used Ali as a way of talking to people, but when I go to games and I see opposing fans, I like to poke some fun, and of course I don't go below the belt. It's a whole different world nowadays, so it's I don't their personal look or their whether they are able to respond to me well or not is I never kind of go there. It's just, hey, you have a bad taste in sporting teams, and
it's like you and Russell Westbrook. What's going on now? I mean, Russell Westbrook might Pags be hurt by the things you're saying about him, but for you, you're just trying to help your team along.
That's exactly correct.
Russell Westbrook, but he might be taking it personally.
I mean, we heard that.
The Sixers someday, for all you know. I don't know why I have this gut feeling, Pags. I don't know why that Russell Westbrook will be a Philadelphia 76er before his career is over. I just got that feeling. I don't know what it is. I can see the Lakers and the Sixers pulling off a deal by somehow the Lakers pick up, if they can, Tobias Harris's contract. And, it depends. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes at LA, but they have to do something. They're not just going to say,
I hear you.
Anthony Davis is going to come back. He'll be healthy. We'll be okay. They've got to make one at least semi-bold move. And I know Phil Jackson behind the scenes likes Russell Westbrook, but I just don't see them coming
Jack,
back.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick because we have a very special guest that came on, had just popped on really quickly. Good morning, Mac.
Hey, Mac.
What's going on, guys? How you doing?
Mac, great to see you, Mac.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hey, good to see you too. I figured I'd pop in real quick. I'm still here at the hospital. I should be out tomorrow, and hopefully back for Sunday's show. So I figured I'd come in. I've been following you guys and listening to, Jack give his long-winded speeches about stuff that nobody, remembers. But that's good. I'm glad he's still doing that. So that's good.
Well, I'm glad you're coming out of the bullpen because Pags' control is shaky in the early going. Yeah. I'm going to manage Pags the way Joe Girardi manages the Phillies. How do you like that?
Lord.
That's how I'm going to try to manage Pags. And he's going to manage
Holy, good job. I just
Pags.
Yeah, it's hard to
coach me the way Doc Rivers.
It's hard to hear. Yes. It's hard to hear you. The quality here ain't that great. So I hear you're breaking up. It's the best I've ever heard your sound before. But yeah, listen, you guys are doing a great job as always. I can't wait to watch the rest of the show. And just keep up the good work. Hopefully Sunday I'm back. Pags, great job. Jack, as always, you do a great job anyway. That's why you're my co-host. So I just want to check in real quick with you guys and tell you everything's going good.
That's that. Well,
yeah. Again, you sound like a computer. You sound like a computer. No problem, guys. I'll be watching. So keep up the great work as you always do, guys.
Thanks a lot, Mac.
All right, Mac. Get better, and we'll see you on Sunday.
Sure will.
Yeah, he was on a little bit of a lag there, but
yeah. Well, how do you like that comparison? I'm gonna if I have to manage you, Pags, I'm gonna manage you the way Joe Girardi does the Philly bullpen.
Oh,
Is that a
well,
good
that's
endorsement?
you know what? Even yesterday, you might as, and that's a good segue to start
They
about
won
sports.
yesterday. They won
They did win
yesterday.
yesterday. And of course, Nola, who has only had 104 pitches, gets pulled out because he obviously lets up that double. And it was like, of course he
104
let up other
pitches
hits.
is getting up there, Pax. You got to
Yeah,
think
you
of
know what? But I'm not as concerned about the 104 pitches. He could have gone 120 pitches. He wasn't going to. You're going to rest his arm for the other 16 pitches? I mean, is that really what we're talking about? He could have been out of that game in another 6 pitches. We had no idea what would have happened. He already had one out. He gets that double. Does that mean that he's tired? And then they don't even bring in the closer. And that's the problem. It's like, and of course they let up the run. It winds up being a 4-1 game instead of 4-0. And I just don't understand. I don't understand what his thought process is. And we all said it at of course, like I said, I was in my living room at Dolan's Bar, and everybody who's watching the game with me turned around and said the same thing. It says, are they going to blow this one now? Is this what they're going to do? Is this how they do it? That the bullpen just gives it up again. And of course they didn't, which was nice. But even then it took time, so it was like he wound up with 2 men on. I don't know.
What's an acceptable season for the Phillies? Obviously, if they don't make the playoffs, that's not acceptable. If they make the playoffs as a wild card and get eliminated right away, is that an acceptable season? At least, that won't make Philly fans happy, but they'll feel, well, it's not a failure. We can, move forward with Girardi next year.
I think to move forward with Girardi, he's going to have to have at least won that wild card game. That he has to get to an actual series and not just a 1-game playoff. Just my opinion. And that's if he makes it that far. Like I said, it's becoming too prevalent of a conversation to everybody in Philadelphia, in the Philadelphia media, who talks about the sport of baseball, about what's going on with Joe Girardi. And then, of course, consequently, there's been a lot of talk. I mean, obviously, the Flyers are looking for a coach. It came out yesterday that LeBron James is the one guy in LA.
Coach the Flyers.
No, LeBron James wants Doc Rivers as his coach, and that's what's driving the conversation of whether the Lakers will try to trade for Doc Rivers and what would be the compensation. Is it a second-round pick? Is it a first-round pick? Is it, how much is Morey going to go after for a coach? And
I wouldn't consult LeBron James on this. If they feel a need to consult LeBron James, just make him the coach, the official coach, and let him bring in the assistants to run things. That would make LeBron happy. I would actually consider doing that. Look at LeBron's history, Pags. Mike Brown, who's now going to be the Sacramento King coach, okay, as soon as the playoffs are done with Golden State. He was a Cleveland Cavalier coach. They let him go because reportedly LeBron James wasn't happy with him. Now, they could say that's all a rumor, but I want you to consider this. When LeBron James left Cleveland and went to Miami, the Cavaliers rehired Mike Brown. That was like their way of saying, we feel bad we let you go in the first place, but because that SOB LeBron, we shouldn't have listened to him. So Mike Brown comes back. Eric Spoelstra, reportedly, LeBron wanted him out at Miami, but Pat Riley, kudos to him, put LeBron in his place by telling him Spoelstra's here, he's going nowhere at all. He made LeBron understand that in no uncertain terms. That's not negotiable. That's not up for discussion. So then LeBron James goes back to Cleveland. He's not happy with David Blatt. David Blatt gets let go with a 30-11 record. Imagine that, 30 wins, 11 losses. You're fired. And you know what Coach Pop said? David Blatt should just retire from coaching, because if I was him, I'd be so disillusioned and fed up. I'm so disgusted with the sport that they can let a guy like him go. Now he goes, LeBron is, after that, he's going to LA. Does he have Frank Vogel's back? They win an NBA title with Frank Vogel, but LeBron never really spoke up in support. I mean, just make LeBron the darn coach if you're going to consult him. I'm serious, Pax. I'm serious.
I believe you.
Let him bring in his X's and O's guys so the game will be managed really well, and let LeBron sit down with the coaching staff, be in on the meetings because he's the head coach. Say, I think this lineup, that lineup will go well. I mean, come on, don't just consult LeBron. Oh, we want, because LeBron wants Doc Rivers. Then it doesn't work out. LeBron moves on in a year. I just don't like the amount of power LeBron is being given. The only exception I would give a guy like LeBron power, if he's a year away from free agency and he's young, like he's 27 years old, and you want him to sign a long-term contract, a guy like him or Jordan, I would think of Michael Jordan. He hated Jerry Reisendorf, but Jordan never pushed the envelope, demanded the ultimate power. He was coachable. He hated his GM, but he didn't go to the owner and said it's either me or the GM. He did, but something about LeBron, he's just commanding too much power, and I'm kind of sick of it.
Well, then, I mean, and then you think about that. First off, has there ever been a time where there's been a player coach in basketball? Obviously.
Bill Russell, they won a couple of NBA titles, player coach. Yeah. But you defer the game. The game's a little more advanced with the X's and O's in the sense, but no, it's doable. All you need is a head guy on the bench. You're the coach. You're a player, but you hold the power between games more or less to sit down. This is what I want. I'd like a new lineup. I'd like to run more. I'd like this strategy. And you let your assistants know, and they incorporate it. But LeBron would feel good that they're his guys. He's in charge. It's not such a bad idea if you get the right, assistants under you. You get a Kenny Atkinson as someone under you, or Kenny Atkinson really should get the job as the head coach of the Lakers. He was a real good disciplinarian with the Nets, but because Irving and Durant went crazy about him because he was a disciplinarian, he got let go.
Gotcha. Well, and I think about that in baseball. I mean, the last player coach that I really remember was Pete Rose. And, we all know how that turned out because he also liked to, gamble a little bit. And even though he said he was betting on his own team to win, I mean,
I don't think he was a player at the end. His last year, I think, was 1989, if I'm not mistaken, on the date. Yeah, because I think the Reds won the World Series in 1990. They beat the Oakland A's, and that was Lou Piniella was the manager of the Reds. So I think his last year was like 89. If I'm not mistaken, but I don't recall him being a player at that point. Maybe.
Yeah, no, he wasn't really a player, but he was a player coach for like a couple of years.
Okay, yeah.
I like 85, 86. I think he was a player coach where he actually took up a spot on the roster and coached the team.
Pete Rose is in the Cincinnati Red Hall of Fame. Do the fans in Philadelphia think of him as being a Philadelphia Philly?
Yes. Without a doubt. I mean, that he was a Red, but he was also a Philly. And I mean, because he not only just took us to one World Series that we won, took us to a second World Series with the old Red machine at that point, where they recreated the Reds from the 70s in 1983 that got, lost to the Orioles. I think, did we get swept or did we lose 4-1 in that series? I think we may have even gotten swept.
What year are we talking about?
1983.
Oh, 83. Right. I think it was 5 games, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think we lost 4-1 to the Orioles.
Won the first game, and then I think they lost the last 4, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
I was young back then, but I remember.
Lenny Dykstra, Met or Philly? What's his legacy? Well,
he's always going to be revered in Philadelphia. I mean, he was always He was a Philly, and he was a big part of that '93 team. However, I think of him as a Met.
A little more
he
of a
had his
Met.
best years as a Met.
I'll tell you how we think of guys. It's weird. Dr. Paul Semendinger, who does the debate show with Mac and myself Saturday, he's a school principal and a renowned author as well. But he was paid a surprise visit. His staff arranged for Darryl Strawberry as a surprise to come to his school. And Dr. Semendinger is the ultimate Yankee guy. He has the website for the Yankees and everything. So Strawberry's there. And you know what my thought process was, what I said to Mac in the beginning? And I'm ashamed being a Yankee fan. I said it. I said, wow, that's a beautiful thing. But it would have been even nicer had they gotten him a Yankee. Because I thought of Strawberry's a Met. And then it dawned on me, I was ashamed. You want to know why, Pax? Because Strawberry was a member of 3 Yankee World Series teams.
Yep,
Yet
he was.
I thought of him as a New York Met. And,
well, that's because of the Strawberry
Yankee player.
That Darryl chant, it will be infamous with the New York Mets. And that's what you think of when you think of Darryl Strawberry.
Infamous with the Boston Red Sox fans. They started it.
Well, I can imagine. And let's bring on, and backstage, we have right now wide receiver Byron Williams. Good morning, Byron. How are you?
Hey, good morning. How you guys doing?
It's nice to see a man come on the show who knows as much football as me.
See, and was there ever a time, I'm going to ask this question to start off, maybe because you would probably know a little bit better. We were talking about how LeBron it may suit the Lakers best to try to make LeBron a player coach. And then also where you have in baseball, like I can remember Pete Rose being, a player manager. I know that we always talk about on-field generals and things like that. Was there ever a time where a player took over the reins as a coach? And the only thing that I can use as a memory that I had was that during the Eagles years with Kotite, that Kotite was never really good at making any adjustments. And Jim McMahon, who was the backup quarterback at the time, this is after the '85 World Series, would make the adjustments for the team rather than Kotite, that his coaching staff would be in a whole different room and Jim McMahon would be the one that would make all of the adjustments for the team moving forward. And I want to know if there was more players like that actually do more coaching than the actual coaches do.
Yeah, no doubt. I think back in the day, in a lot of instances, there was always some players that's been in the league 10 plus years, and we had one with the Giants, a guy named Marion that played for Alabama. I think that's who he played, but he was like a coach player, and he's the type of guy that know all the insides with the coaches. And then he come in reference with the players, and that way you can always have a hands-on type relationship. And I think those are the intangible situations where these teams can really take advantage of coaches and players because of the relationship that these players have and trust in each other. So I think it's good to have a player coach on your team. Even my last game, I had a torn Achilles, and that's what I did. I was always going to all the different meeting rooms and talk to the players, kind of see what they're, get a gauge on what they think and what their feelings are. And I think that's where you can get the advantage when you have a player coach on teams, whether it's baseball, football, basketball. And I think LeBron James, when you get up to 37 years old, I think that'll be a good thing to start thinking about, because the impact that he have made and the stamp that he have put on the game of basketball. So I think that'll be a plus for any team to take advantage of.
Yeah, and I think, it's one of those things that's not really spoken about a tremendous amount for the 2017 when the Eagles won in 2018, that there were so many people that were out for the season that year. Like you had Jason Peters, you had one of the running backs who returned the kicks. He's killing me right now. I can't remember his name right off the top of my head. But those guys actually, they were always on the field still, that they acted as coaches and they were helping the players, and they were able to see kind of through the players' eyes some of the things and being able to coach them up specifically so that they were able to win a Super Bowl. I mean, and I think that that's, when you think about stuff like that, and you think about how they still played a major part of the team,
Right.
even from the sidelines, and that how that is not really looked at a lot. It's like, oh well, of course they, the people on the field are the ones that made it happen. But
Right.
sometimes when you are able to watch from the sidelines, I feel like the game slows down. And once it starts to slow down, you start to see certain things a lot differently than when you're right in the middle of it. It's like seeing the forest from the trees. You can't really do it. But yet, when you're on the outside looking in, you're like, okay, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. You can't let this happen. And, and then ultimately they get coached up, not just by their coaches themselves, but by their teammates, where they may usually have a little bit more respect for than some of the coaches. I mean, because I got to imagine that, I sometimes think that, especially in football, more in football than maybe any other sport, that there's a front of the house, back of the house mentality,
Right.
where you have the players and then you have the coaches. And it's sometimes they are, when they're in tune, the restaurant works great. But when they're not in tune, that the players, because they're the ones on the field, may start to try to run the asylum or run the restaurants, where the managers and the coaches are the ones that really are the ones that got to make it all happen. How often does that really occur? And I guess losing is what really starts all that off like that.
Absolutely. It's losing that brings that, bring that to play. But I think in football, you have to have some type of case scenarios where you bringing in some type of motivational speaker or ex-coach or ex-player sometime through the week, because of the injuries and the things that occur on the field and off the field. So you got all these different changes, right? So even your practice roster have to be in place, because if you don't, you can't get a run. That's why in football, you see so many teams, they have 5 or 6 game winning streaks. And and that's very important. And that changed the morale of the team. And so you have to do something. But when the team is losing, like Detroit lost all those games last year, and then Campbell had to do something when they started looking good. They were competitive at the end. So I just think in football, you have to have a lot of motivational factors that plays a part of, the outcomes of games and case scenarios. And, the chemistry too got to work too. You got to have players that working together on all cylinders and things. So I just think too that football is a game that really, you have to be very creative on how you bring in different case scenarios to motivate the players and bring about, it's all about winning, right? So those are the key factors, I think.
Well, you need the right guy on the field. You can talk about all the coaching you want, but the leadership, I think, has to come from within. You take the case of the Giants, like losing Blake Martinez on defense. He gave that defensive unit an attitude. He wouldn't have let them quit at any point during the year. And, certain losses, like with the Giants, even though LT was the best player on defense, it was Harry Carson, I think, who supplied a little more leadership. LT did it by example and by just being a great player.
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Harry Carson was like the more vocal guy who got, the players focused. I mean, LT just did his thing. He was like Superman, but Harry Carson was the voice.
Absolutely. That's
you
great.
Played with those guys, so you're an authority on it.
Yeah, that's a great example. And that's a great example. And then when Harry left, it was guys stepping up to the plate too, So we definitely Harry was the guy who got in everybody's face, special teams, offense. I remember one time I caught a pass and I slammed the ball down on football. Harry came up to me immediately and said, "Byron, we don't play that way. It's not about, it's a team sports, it's a play after play, we play to the end." And and I appreciate that. And we had Gary Reason right after Harry, and we had Pepper Johnson. So these guys came in, and Pepper Johnson talked about what he had to learn from Harry, and he was right there in his shadow all the time. And Harry, he was very, very detailed about how you play the game and how you become a leader on that level. So you are absolutely right.
How many different type of leaders are there in a locker room? For instance, and I'm saying it because I am a very vocal, loud guy, a rah-rah guy, and ultimately sometimes that plays really well. Sometimes people don't want to hear that, and I specifically think about like the 1 year when we had Terrell Owens and, McNabb wasn't having a good game and he was trying to rah-rah him up and just McNabb wasn't really interested in hearing it. And I'm talking about one specific game, not that whole year after the fact. I got to imagine that there are quiet leaders and then very vocal leaders.
Absolutely.
And how do those guys, how does the respect level in those types of situations work? Because I think that, like, for instance, and I'm only talking about the Eagles, I feel like Jason Kelce is a very outspoken, intelligent leader, but he's not screaming like unlike when he did, when they won the Super Bowl and he had that whole speech. I mean, that was an amazing speech that he had kind of thought about his entire walk. You know what I mean?
Right.
So when he got up there, he didn't need any pieces of paper because he had it all figured out in his head. And that's something that you really can't do. I know how hard that is to figure out exactly how you want to say it. But then you have like Brandon Graham, who is very in your face, yelling at the other team, trying to get people excited through the words that he's saying. I got to imagine that sometimes they conflict with each other. And how does all that work in a locker room when you have so many different egos there? And I got to imagine that's such a very interesting dynamic, because then you put the coaches involved and they got egos too. And
I think being on that team and teammates, I think you earn that. I think guys come in immediately knowing, especially as younger players too, you can see who's vocal, who's quiet, and then who lead by example, right? So it be defined, and then you learn real quickly who those guys are. And then you have rookies that come in that's been leaders on their college teams and things, and they have to make the adjustment. But real quickly, it's in you. I believe a lot of guys lead by example, but I think you need all different types on the team, because it just brings more morale, more momentum, and it brings dynamics to your team. So you have leaders on the special teams. And then when you see these C's on the jerseys, those are the captains. Those guys are voted in by the team, by the players. So that's something that you show or you earn, and they just don't stamp a C on everybody's jersey.
Byron, you make a great point. Let's use the Eagles as an example. Their third-round draft pick, Nakobe Dean, was the defensive captain. The Georgia football team, the national champions. Right. He's coming to the Eagles as a rookie. He's probably been used to being a leader his whole life, but he wasn't quite a first-round draft choice. Does a guy like him just transition very slowly into a leader, or can he hit the ground running? If he performs really well in training camp, can he be a leader right off the bat, or he has to act like a rookie? Because they expect rookies to know their place. You can't be a leader if you have to know what your place is.
Yeah, you're right. And I was just thinking about that. That's why they have these rookie camps, and then they do these assessments, and then they give certain case scenarios. And I think he's gonna transition over real quickly. And I think again in the NFL, you have to earn this. You have to show it in practice. You have to show it in the classroom, and then you're gonna get tested on how much you can absorb and learn, and then put that into action. And I think once he get the speed of the game down, it's a lot of case scenarios. So once he get all that down, I think he'll make the adjustment. And I think he's gonna become a leader, no doubt, because that's what he's been in high school and college and so forth. So and then a player should have expectations. I mean, you don't. They just don't hand you these positions in the NFL, so you have to earn it as well. So with game practice and films and how quickly he can learn, and then he'll be able to transition all that. I think it's something that you have to earn though in the National Football League.
Can a kicker ever be a leader? If it's an Adam Vinatieri, that's about, let's give him a waiver. Could an Adam Vinatieri, if a guy never misses, he could possibly be one, right?
Yeah, 20 years. You know, in fact, Tutar Jones called me, and he asked me to get in touch with Adam Vinatieri, and I did. And so they getting ready to do some type of autograph signing together, Tutar and Adam.
That's an odd pairing. That's an odd couple, I got to tell you.
I know, it's an odd couple. So, you know, these guys have played 16 and 20 years. And so it's really good to see that these guys are still actively involved in the game, and people are interested in getting their autographs and appearances and things like that. But yeah, no doubt, you know, Adam Vinatieri is one of the best of all time. So, and I was drafted with a guy. Morton Anderson is another guy. So you know,
he was the one that comes to my mind. Morton
Anderson,
you got these that he played 28 years.
Yeah. You got these kickers that really pillows as well. So yeah, some special team guys are leaders and stuff as well. So yes.
Yeah, and you know, especially because I love, you know, I was always a big David Akers fan, and he wasn't afraid of contact. I mean, he was actually, you know, he was real big into, I want to say, Taekwondo and things like that. So he was really in shape in general, and would actually make a couple of tackles on occasion, you know, on special teams. But
you know, a real funny story. Sean Landeta got in trouble with Bill Parcells, and he was out selling some tickets. You know, we get these tickets and stuff, and Bill Parcells found out that he was out selling some tickets. And boy, he got on him in front of everybody. That changed the whole dynamic for Sean. And but Sean was one of the best punters ever too. So, but yeah, it's amazing what a little tweak here and there goes. But you definitely got to have coaches that know how to make players get the best out of the players. And you know, and that's another dynamic thing too. I think the coaches have to be able to be plugged into the players.
Well, and what is the biggest difference between, like, so when you say Bill Parcells, and I think of Bill Belichick, and I think at how they are so consistently able to get the best from their players, even with the team of no names last year, Bill Belichick was able to make the playoffs, even though that they had a horrendous playoff appearance there, they made it. You know, and that when you looked on paper, that team shouldn't have made it. You know, that's possible. You know, that I think that there's no way that they should have made it, but yet he was able to do that. And then, like I said, Bill Parcells was able to go just about anywhere and command a certain level of respect on any team. You know, he went to the Cowboys, he went to Miami. He was able to just be the guy. What is it about those coaches specifically that garner so much respect that they are able to get the most from their guys without really even having to say much? You know, is it more just done between the players, or is it just the aura of the coach?
No, I just think it's what these coaches do differently. Like, for example, Bill Parcells used to be at work at 4:00. I mean, you just didn't hear coaches being at the stadium early. And then Bill Parcells know everything else to know about every player. And I think Belichick picked that up. And Belichick make a player, you know, I saw Belichick a couple of years ago in Miami, and he said, "Hey, what's up, B?" So they make you feel like you're wanted. They make you feel like you're important. And they do the little things. You know, when Bill Parcells was down here in Dallas, I called him and said, "Coach, I need a couple of autographs. I'm playing this golf tournament, doing a fundraiser." He said, "Byron, all you got to do is come over here. We'll get it for you, blah, blah, blah." So those are type of things that these coaches do. The coaches that you just mentioned are different than any other coach. I think you have to be really, really in tune to knowing that I care about this guy and I love him, and whether he played for me 20 years ago or not. So those little things like that matters. And I think a lot of these coaches this day and time is all about winning and not building a relationship. I think too, Bill Parcells build relationships and know everything else, know about every player on his team, whether you a rookie or a veteran or what. He did the little things. And then one of the most memorable things I remember about Belichick is that he would walk around the locker room with a pencil in the back of his ear, and sometimes he'll pull that pencil down and he'll be taking notes. And I think those things separate you from the average coach, and it separate you from being successful and not successful. So that's why these guys got longevity. That's why they do it differently. And I think those are the little things that some of these young coaches need to pick up.
Let me ask, if Belichick had a chance to sit down and reflect, maybe he has, his time with New England and his time with the Giants, which made him happier, you think?
Well, I just think at the latter, I think no doubt New England probably made him happier. But for his learning and training and knowing the most critical thing about players and teams is definitely with the Giants, because those made him prepare for greatness. And I think, when it all said and done, he's going to be one of the greatest coaches ever. And I think most of the early on things that he learned was with the Giants and the players that was at the Giants. And no doubt it made him who we are today.
Looking now at, of course, obviously, Parcells isn't coaching anymore, and Belichick is really long in the tooth. I can't imagine that he's going to be a coach for another 10 years. I figure that his
Don't be
time is
so
probably...
sure.
Hey, no, and I don't put anything past him, because I guess he's going to be able to call his own shot when he wants to leave. Is there any coach that, like newer age coach, that you see, just whether it's on the sidelines or just from what you hear about, that you think has that potential to be the next? Obviously nobody's going to be Belichick, but to be that next type. I always hear about McVay, but I'm not really sold on McVay.
That's Mike Tomlin right now. That's the next Belichick, basically.
Yeah, Mike is he gonna be considered probably one of the best coaches, I think, just for what's happening in Pittsburgh. When you look at the 49ers and you look at Green Bay, there are some coaches now, I think, that's doing the right thing and doing it right, all because of what? Their dad, their DNA, them being around football when they were younger. I think those guys have the advantage, and they done seen the game and know the game inside and out. So I think that's about 3 or 4 coaches out there right now, I think, gonna have a good chance of a longevity and making history.
Well, I hope Nick Sirianni is one of them. So at least with the Eagles for a little while.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I agree with you. But you know what I know about the Eagles? They still got my man around, Harold Carmichael. And you talking about one of the best people ever to know and meet. Harold, he was my roommate for 4 weeks when we travel, but you talking about a superb man, and he just loved Philly, and everything else to know about Philly is Harold Carmichael.
Yes, in fact, I just saw him the other day. He was at the Eagles autism run. He's been my all-time favorite Eagle, since for as long as I can remember. I remember in 3rd grade writing an essay about him. Now my teacher only gave me a C+ for that essay. I was a little upset about that, but it was a really good essay, talking about Harold Carmichael. And of course, everybody kind of forgets that he won like the NFL Man of the Year before the Man of the Year was really a thing. You know what I mean? It was just because of all the stuff he did for his community and things of that nature. And that kind of gets overlooked in a lot of ways because it wasn't as big a deal as it is now.
Right.
When you see about some of the people like, where Chris Long donated his entire salary to charity, and the guy who was on the Rams who had he's like 48 years old, and it was his first time starting a playoff game, let alone a Super Bowl game, and how all the things that he does for his community and so on and so forth. There's a lot of guys out there that do a lot of good for the community, and it's just they're just known mostly for playing football, but really they are very active, and it's important to kind of see that stuff. And I think that's the biggest reason why they keep him around, because he always was really good with the community, and he is such an icon here in Philadelphia, being here for both losing and winning seasons.
Absolutely.
If Terrell Owens had been a modest, soft-spoken guy and just let his talking, his play do his talking, would he have been really revered in Philadelphia to this day? Because right now, I would imagine they don't look back too fondly on Terrell Owens.
Yeah, in my opinion, yeah, I think he needed a mentor. You know, I did 4 or 5 football camps for Terrell Owens here in Dallas, and he really have a good heart. But he just, you know, he just want the ball. He real selfish for us playing the game of football. And I think he needed some mentor. I need a Harold Carmichael or have somebody like that to come in and have a conversation with him and say, these are some of the things that you might need to tweak here and there, right? And I just think that was his problem. But, you know, for his ability to play the game and want, you know, and having all the tools to play the game, he definitely had that. But I just think, too, that a lot of these young players, that's what they're missing. They're missing mentors that can come in and help them on and off the football field. And, you know, it's a difference when you have both. And I think you can make history when you have both.
He's around 50 or so. He says he could still play in the NFL, and he's serious. Didn't he play in some league recently and caught a touchdown pass? Is it conceivable, before laughing him off, okay? Yeah. Is it conceivable if he gets in the shape of his life, would he be good enough with what's left to maybe be legitimately, not as a gimmick, make at least a practice squad of an NFL team? At his age, it's just out of the question.
It don't make sense. I think it's a big no to that. And I just think it's a young man game. When you're in your 40s, you better hang up the cleats, especially being a receiver. It's just certain things that you can't do. I mean, he can be in the middle of a pass route, and next thing you know, his hamstrings pop. Just because of the fact that that's the nature of the beast. You just can't perform at a level like that consistently, time and over again. It's just reality. You know, let's look at reality. I wake up every morning trying to look at reality. You know, I just left the weight room, and you know, when I looked around that room in the weight room, ain't nobody in there but me. But my point is, you got to have something different. You got to put time in. It's a lot of things that's in the equation of playing in the National Football League on that level. No, he like Michael Vick. No, I mean all these different guys that talk about they can come back and play. It's just, you know, you can come back for 1 second or 1 moment, but for his playing and making your impact like you did in the day, it's a whole different case scenario.
Back in the day, George Blanda played till he was 48. He was a backup quarterback and he kicked. And it was a field kicker, yeah.
Kicking is different than running up and down that field.
Yeah.
Well, how about the one quarterback? I mean, I don't think he's on a team right now, but the Eagles had him. He filled in for Wentz against Seattle. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was 44 years old last year. And
Brady's age. What's Brady? Is he 45 now?
He's 44. Yeah, he's gonna be 45, I think so.
He's gonna be 45. But see, and we're talking a good segue with Breeze. Like Breeze wants to come back. You know, and I think of like when Chris Carter wanted to come back and he played one game and he got absolutely annihilated in that one hit. And I'll you know, and I'm not a big fan of Collingsworth, but he said, hey, Chris, come back into the studio. You don't need to prove anything to anybody. What, you know, you could tell he was just not ready for what he got himself into. And he played that one game and that was the end of that. He's like, back on retirement again. Cause you know, the fight's out of you sometimes, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know, you just can't play that game in the 40s. I mean, only certain, like Tom Brady got it down, but everybody can't do what Tom Brady did.
Byron, correct me if I'm wrong. You'd know better than I would when you get older. I know you slowed down speed-wise, but let's say you still have experience, savvy to get open, and you still have this skill level. I think the resiliency, you just physically can't take the hits the way you did when you were younger. When you're younger, you bounce up, you're resilient. When you're older, it just hurts more and more and more.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was walking my dog, you know, some years back, and I slipped and fell down, and I was like stunned. You know, when I was young, I just would have bounced right up, and I was just stunned by the landing.
I was running the other day, came back home and relaxed. Next thing I know, I got a cramp like crazy. I said, "Oh man,"
yeah.
You know, things like that happen. You know, Jason Witten, you know, he came back for that 1 year. I mean, you can do it, you can try it, but I'm telling you, it's never been successful. Ain't too many people have ever say they've been successful coming back.
Yeah.
So I guess on that note, you don't think Breeze is going to be able to really make an impact for the Saints or anything like that coming back this year?
I don't think he would be able to compete on the level he was when he was in the game. You know, his last season, you know, he missed 9 games, 5. I don't know how many games he missed, but you know, the nature of the beast is the injuries is the key factor for older guys. Your body just can't put that out, produce that, and you can't. It just ain't gonna happen. I just see muscles, aches, shoulder pains. You throw that ball over 200 or 300 times a day. It's gonna definitely be a impact on your capability of how you perform, and that's the key. It's all about performance.
His skill level had slipped his last year. He wasn't the same player, and now with an additional year off, I think media's making too much out of this. Breeze may have been joking around and said, "Well, it crossed my mind," and then everyone's just running with this.
And that's the key. Your mind still can think it, but your body can't do it.
Yeah, well, I think the same thing with Jason Peters specifically. I mean, that unfortunately, you always hear that Hall of Famers usually stay 2 years after they should. You know, that it takes a certain mindset to be able to get out of the game because, you know, it becomes everything that you know. So, you know, and I feel like that in his case, it's been like 3 or 4 years, you know, where then since he should have walked away. And you know, at one point, I felt like that him staying in is taking away from the fact that he was a first ballot Hall of Famer. But now the last 4 years I feel like have deterred from that, you know, and it's like at what point do you want your legacy to withstand? You know, consequently, then I think of Brady, you know, and I feel like as long as he's the Rolling Stone, you know what I mean? The Rolling Stone gathers no moss, and that's kind of what it is. If you don't stop, you won't stop, and you can continue to do this. But unfortunately, like you said, he's one injury away from probably retirement.
You know, it makes no sense with Brady. Nothing left to prove. He could be in the booth for Fox. He could be high profile. Why risk, like you said, getting injured, getting your leg broken? I mean, he's gotten ahead of the curve. He could get out like on top, basically, and he wants to push it out. And when does he want it to end? And if he gets injured, I bet that's not the way he wants to go out. He's going to want to make a comeback. Yeah. And I think it's going to get to the point with Tom Brady where he won't have a starting job with the team. He'll have maybe get injured and want to make a comeback. Of course, he'll be invited to a number of camps. Mm-hmm. But if he does get a starting job somewhere, it's going to be on a team that's not too good, not an ideal situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, you know, Jason Peters grew up 16 miles from my high school. And last year he probably coming to my football camp. He didn't show up. But yeah, he done stayed too long too. I think he needs to, you know, write it off and ride into the sunset. But yeah, it can be a big minus for guys who stay too long.
Well, and I feel that especially with how well he's loved in Philadelphia, not just from the fans, but with the ownership. Yeah, that he could get a job coaching right off of retirement. Like, yep, we're going to have you here because he's so well known in Philadelphia. And I feel that, you know, there's got to be something within you that's making you want to stay, right? In comparison, and that's the hard part. I guess when you have it, you have it, and when you don't, you don't. And you know,
he loves the game packs. What else is he going to do with his life? You want to send him out to the golf course?
No, I want to send him out to the coaching ranks.
It sounds appealing, but he loves the game. You know, the majority of players, and Byron can answer this better than you and I, Pax. If they weren't getting paid, they'd still want to play. Maybe not take the hard hits, but they'd want to be on the field, limit the contact, make it a little less violent, and they're going to want to play. They'll show up and play a game and not even get paid. Football, no one would ever get paid again. They would still, you know, more than half the guys play.
Well, yeah, you're right. But, you know, you can't stay too long, like we've said. I just think, too, that until you play the game, it's just that it's football is in you. That's why I do these camps. I think that's part of what I've been doing for a long time too. But it football is just a different type of game. It's hard to explain. You got to have it's passion, it's love, and sometimes these guys don't know when to leave.
Like Mac is having an event on June 27th in Connecticut, a fundraiser for the semi-pro, football teams. And those guys play for love of game. I mean, I know they have a dream of getting to the NFL. It's an extreme long shot, but let them have the dream,
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't disrupt the rest of their life, it's fine to hold on to that dream, because you never know. Once in a while, in a very rare occasion, the guy bucks the odds and actually does it. But those guys play for love of game,
Absolutely.
out in the field. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, well, Byron, we appreciate you coming on. As this was a quick half hour. I like talking to you because I don't get to do it very often. Obviously, Mac is here, and I usually follow you at around 9:30, so I don't get to say much.
Byron, just quickly, who's going to come ahead? Who, the Eagles or the Giants? Who's going to have a better record next year?
I hate to say it, but the Eagles gonna be tough. They're gonna be tough. But the Giants, I'm expecting the unexpected with the Giants. So there's possibilities. But you know what? The NFC East is a battle. I don't care what the team you throw the records out, it's gonna be all about consistency and playing error-free football, and it's gonna be some bruises out there on that football field.
Yeah. I think the whole NFC East as a whole is going to wind up doing a lot better than previous years, the last couple of years. I think that we're going to be a force to be reckoned with, and it's possible that everybody thought that there shouldn't be two teams that come out of it last year, and yet two teams made it to the playoffs. So I still expect that there could be two that come out this year as well. So again, I appreciate you coming on, Byron, and we look forward to seeing you next Friday, probably with Mac back in the saddle. So thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Man, you guys make my Friday. I appreciate you guys as well.
Byron. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Byron.
Have a great
good
weekend.
One.
Okay.
You too. All right. And so we're going to just do a quick commercial break. And on the other side, we have Keith Engel from TGI Sports going to talk about how much he misses Tom Brady in New England and how they are going to try to stay out of the basement in the AFC East. So we'll be right back talking about that here in just about 2 minutes.
My baloney has a first name. It's O-S-C-A-R. My baloney has a second name. It's M-A-Y-E-R. Oh, I love to eat it every day. And if you ask me why, I'll say, 'cause Oscar Mayer has a way with B-O-L-O-G-N-A.
Oscar Mayer, the first name in Bologna.
How's that?
There are times when only an ice-cold beer will do. And there are times, like this one, when it's got to be Schaefer. Schaefer, like any fine beer, tastes wonderful in that first cold glass. But, and this is what really sets Schaefer apart, the pleasure of this beer doesn't fade after one glass or two. Even after your thirst is gone, the pleasure of ice-cold Schaefer keeps coming on. Your last one is every bit as rewarding as your first. That's why
Schaefer is the one beer to have when you're having more than one.
The Hometown Foundation is excited to bring back the Dream Ride Experience, August 26th to the 28th at Connecticut's Farmington Polo Club. Join us in celebrating the accomplishments of our Dream Riders while enjoying live music, a car and motorcycle show, family fun zone, pet adoptions, canine demonstrations, the Fireman's Chili Cook-Off, and much, much more. Get your tickets today.
When you drive to Wendy's and order a single, you get more beef than the Whopper or the Big Mac. At Wendy's, you never have to ask, where's the beef?
Anyone else?
My name is David, and in 8 years, I'll be an alcoholic.
I do.
I'll start drinking in middle school, just at parties. But my parents won't start talking to me about it till high school. And by then, I'll already be in some trouble.
Kids who drink before age 15 are 5 times more likely to have alcohol problems when they're adults.
The thing is, my parents won't even see it coming.
So start talking.
Who's next?
Before they start drinking.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboys fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, from Brooklyn. Hey, you guys any...
And we are back. And as I said right before the commercial break, we bring on Keith Engel from TGI Sports. Good morning, Keith.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Good morning, Keith.
I didn't realize my team was in such dire straits. So I'm.
I thought that was a great segue. Just to bring out how bad that I think. It's funny because they were doing the power rankings, and I was excited to see that they have the Eagles listed as 9th in the power rankings, which I don't, I literally take this all with a grain of salt. It's because obviously you have to play these games. And the last time they thought that the Eagles were going to be so great, they had the dream team, and the dream team went 8-8. And, literally that dream became a nightmare. So ultimately, before that, I still think that the Eagles are going to be a good team. I don't believe that they are as full of the hype as they are getting right now. That being said, I saw the Patriots definitely on the lower side of that, which is not something that they're used to.
Well, depending on the power rankings you're looking at. So I've seen them, in the low teens, 13, 14, maybe even 15, but I could probably find the Eagles in that spot if I look hard enough at different power rankings. It depends on what you look at. So,
but do you believe that Bill Belichick is done enough to be able to keep this team relevant with as much as that's been going on with, I feel like the Jets are still far away, but Miami has made some real strides and could possibly be that number 2 team in the division. Do you feel that the Patriots are able to keep up with them?
I do, because again, the big question mark in Miami is still a quarterback. And if he doesn't step up and make improvement, and you can say the same thing about the Patriots as well as Mac Jones played last year. He's got to improve. And I do think Belichick has made improvements on the offense. They've got a really deep running game if they stay healthy. I like Harris is really good. Stevenson really played well in spurts last year. So I like the running game. The offensive line still needs some work in training camp, obviously. I think he made some improvements with bringing in Parker and the drafting of Thornton. The problem is going to be the defense. The offense can score points. The offense is going to be okay. Mac Brown, oh my God, what is going on with me today? Mac Jones, I think will make that second-year progression. I think he will be better. He didn't go quite on a Tom Brady conditioning tour this winter, but he did dedicate himself to getting in better shape so that he can get in the training camp and he can be a better player throughout the game and not have some letdowns in the fourth quarter. The defense is what's really going to make or break this team. If they don't improve their run defense specifically, this team's going to have a lot of problems because, the Bills will probably run the ball better. The Dolphins can run the football. And they just got ran over by almost everybody the last quarter of the season last year. And that can't happen again this year. They're not going to be in games. That said, I still think they're the second best team in this division, and the Dolphins and them, I think, will probably battle. And whoever gets if the Patriots get better defensive play or the Miami gets better quarterback play, that will probably determine who finishes second in that division. And the Jets are on the come. I mean, they're ready this year.
Right.
Jet fans, be patient, man. I see a lot of Jet fans still like pulling their hair out, and I'm like, they're building this team the way they should. And this team, and next year, watch out. This team, again, assuming their quarterback progresses the way I think he will, they're going to be a tough team. And they'll be a tough team in some games this year. I don't think they'll be much more competitive this year than they were last year.
Yeah, speaking of New England, it's easy to forget. I mean, they got off to a 1-4 start last year. They lost some really tough games. So that record was deceiving. Then in the middle of the season, they were actually, for numbered games, arguably the best team in football. They looked like they were a serious Super Bowl contender. Yeah. I mean, we had these fantasies, and there was talk New England playing Tampa Bay in the Super Bowl. What a dream matchup. And then they just faltered at the end. I mean, like, what happened? It's like they got old overnight.
Well, they spent a couple games in first place. They did have a good run. And then, again, that front seven just fell apart. I mean, teams just ran the football all over them, and they were out of games before they even had a chance to get into what they wanted to do on offense. And that really is what derailed this season last year, including in the playoff game. All in all, it was a successful season when you look at it. You're playing with a rookie quarterback. You're coming off a down season the year before where they were 6-10 and, their worst record in forever.
Well, they went from 7-9 to 10-7, but they made certain off-season acquisitions. So they basically did what was like expected of them on balance.
Well,
who's running the plays this year? Who's the offensive coordinator? Did they even have one? Is Matt Patricia and Joe Judge running the plays? Two head coaches who didn't cut it with their teams?
Yeah, at the moment, the discussion is that one of those two guys or a combination of them will be calling the plays on offense, which, again, Matt Patricia I don't have a problem with. Matt Patricia is a bright guy, and I think he was so good as a defensive coordinator because he understood all of the parts of football, including offensive football, and I have no doubt in my mind that he could do this. Joe Judge, not so sure. Really good special teams coach. Let's let him go do that. I wouldn't be crazy if I found out, and I'm not sure the players are, to be honest with you, from what I hear coming out of Fox.
The Giants blew a game on special teams when he was their head coach, just to point that out last year.
But he wasn't a special teams coach either. I get that. You should be blowing games in your specialty, right, I guess. But I'm glad
or you shouldn't call quarterback sneaks on third down.
Or not, or that.
Well, what was it, 3rd and 9 or something?
Yeah, exactly. Like 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10. You shouldn't be doing any of that. But hey, listen, that's why Joe was great. Joe couldn't keep his nose out of everybody else's team's business. That was, I feel like, half the problem. That he liked to bap, but couldn't bap
He was mad at the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, the way you played that game, that
he was very, very outspoken about that.
Yeah.
You're right, Jamie. You need to focus on your team. You're the head coach. Forget about other people and what they're doing. Just get your team better and get victories. That's all that matters. That's all people care about.
Right, and the same thing with like Washington, because they say, "Oh, look at them! They're fighting on their sidelines." But you know what? You better worry about your own team and not losing the locker room. And guess what? You just lost the locker room.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Ron Rivera said pretty much that exact same thing to him after those remarks he made about his team. You get your own problems, dude. Be quiet.
So, I'm gonna segue into something different, going from something that Jack said yesterday that I'm sure you will probably love to hear. And he said that by the end of the season, the Philadelphia Phillies will have a better record than the New York Yankees.
Wow. Jack, I'm starting to, I backed up and said I was wrong, at least up till now, because the Yankees have played great baseball. And the Phillies have still got some issues. I mean, they had the defensive meltdown we've been waiting for the other day.
And that's only the second one of the year.
A lot of holes in that Yankee lineup. And rotation.
This stretch right now is going to show how good the Yankees are, right? With the injuries to Stanton, the injuries to LeMahieu, which I don't know. We know how serious that is. Chapman, Loizaga, which is probably the biggest loss of all in my mind. This is a stretch we're going to find out how good the Yankees are. The Yankees can continue to play good baseball, and they've won a couple of games this week that last year they probably would have lost. I think the Yankees are still going to be okay, especially if I'm going to compare them to the Philadelphia Phillies. So, yeah, if you're comparing them to the teams in their own division, I might be a little more concerned. But the Phillies. Listen, I think there's just too many.
Schwarber,
in that position. Too many guys in that position. The managers got him wound so tight, as we keep talking about. He doesn't handle the pitching. I got a lot of experience with Joe Girardi, and I was never a big fan of Joe Girardi. And Joe Girardi's better with young teams than he is with veteran teams, in my mind. He did a great job with the Marlins before he came to the Yankees, but to me, I mean, they never performed as well as they should have under Joe Girardi in 12 years or whatever it was.
Well, and I feel that he's just uninterested. The fact that we have to question some of his moves every day bothers me. When can you just go by, you go by your book, and this is your book says to do this, says to do this, says to do this. At what point do you let the game dictate it itself? Played this game. You didn't have these analytics as you do now. And now all of a sudden you trust the book more than you trust your own instincts to play the game. Why is that? What makes somebody think that way now in comparison to, because it's not like he was forever ago. He didn't play in an old time baseball.
No, but this is an epidemic in baseball in general. I've talked about it ad nauseum the last couple of years. Nobody has a feel for the game as it's being played. As you said, Jamie, and I've said this, there's a script. Here it is. I don't care if my pitcher's, pitching lights out for 6 innings and he has had no high leverage. Because again, when you talk about pitch counts, whether it's 80 or 90 or 100, whatever number you want to say, throwing 100 pitches under very low duress is a lot different than when you got high leverage situations and you're constantly pitching out of trouble. That's a whole different 100 pitches than when you're just breezing through. But we don't take that into account. We don't look at what's going on the field. My book, as you said, I use script, you use book. Your script says, okay, he's got to come out and I got to bring my 6th inning guy in or my 7th inning guy. And then it doesn't matter how the 7th inning guy does. He could strike out 3 guys on 9 pitches. Well, he's done his job. Let me bring my 8th inning guy in. You're rolling the dice every single time because you don't know what that guy's going to do once he comes in. I got a guy who's pitching lights out. Let's get him out of the game because that's not his job and that's not his role on this team. And it's ridiculous that baseball across the board is played this way. It's nonsensical. And I think Buck Showalter and guys like that, who they still have to go with the analytics just because the front offices make them, they still use a little bit of their feel for the game to manage those situations. And Girardi's he went this way with the Yankees as well, especially towards the end. That's my big problem with Aaron Boone is that he does the same kind of thing. So,
but it's been that way, Keith. It's been that way for the last 40 years. When it works, we hear nothing about it, okay? When the Twins played the Cardinals in the World Series, what was it? I think 87. Frank Viola had a 2-run lead for the Twins going into the last inning, but Jeff Reardon came in for the last inning, even though Viola was fine, because Tom Kelly, the manager, said this is how we always do things. When it doesn't work, we speak of Pedro Martinez when Grady Little left him in too long. Let's say Grady Little took him out, saying because we went to our middle relievers all year. That's how we did things. Without Pedro, we would have gotten mad that he yanked Pedro.
I'm one of the few guys who defended Grady Little, and not because, we won that game. Grady Little made the right call in that decision. In that case, in the whole history of baseball, your best pitcher needs to be in the game in that spot. That's what you pay him for.
Grady Little was fired for leaving him in the game.
I understand that, but again, that speaks to what's wrong with the game. He left his ace in there in a place that he needed to win the game right then and there. And
let's say even let's go even in 2003 to that particular game that the Yankees won. Mariano Rivera pitched 3 innings in relief. let's say he gave up a run in the third inning he was pitching, people would have said Mariano never pitches that long. He shouldn't have been left in. And imagine that the Yankees not ironically won it on the Aaron Boone homer. Would Mariano continue to have pitched a couple of more innings? And if Mariano didn't want to come out, he may have argued, don't take me out. They may have given him 5-6 innings.
Yeah, but people who understand the game and have logical arguments aren't going to change their arguments to fit the situation that they're in. My argument will be the same. If you make a decision to leave your starting pitcher in a high leverage situation like Gray Little did, and we'll use that example again, just because it didn't work doesn't mean it wasn't the right decision.
But Pags is getting on Girardi all the time. Girardi has a formula that he follows. He's consistent. Girardi's gonna stay the course no matter what. He's not gonna let guys like Pags influence him. He's not gonna listen to Pags because he feels he knows more baseball than Pags will ever know.
He doesn't know any baseball when he's relying on computer printouts, right? I mean, that's not knowing baseball. That's just looking at computer and numbers and saying, this is what I need to do because the computer says I need to do it this way. And that's what's wrong, because he's afraid. And this way, and by the way, Jack, you're right to a point, because now if you manage by the book or by the script, whichever term you want to use, you can't get bashed by the media because you did what you're supposed to do. But if you follow your gut and do what you think you should do, you will get bashed. And that's what's wrong. And that's why baseball's become what it is. I will never bash a guy for leaving a guy in. If the Yankees left Garrett Cole in a high leverage situation in the 8th inning of a game that he's been breezing through because he's my best option, I don't know what I'm going to get when I bring Chapman in or Loaizaga or anybody. I don't know. I know what he's been doing. I know what this guy's been doing. If he's lost his stuff, I'll get him out of the game. If I think he's still throwing the ball well, I'm leaving him in.
Well, and that's exactly
it's simple.
As I'm thinking about that, I think about how pitch counts have dictated a lot within this game. And the thing that cracks me up the most is that, every inning, when these guys go out there, they throw 4 pitches to warm up. They throw hundreds of pitches before the game to warm up. That 100, Nola pitched 104 pitches yesterday. He let up a double in the 9th inning, and it was still, he had started the inning with 99 pitches, so he had 5 pitches in the inning. I feel like if you were pitching 15 pitches or under in an inning, that you can come right back out for the next inning, that it's not going to be a big deal, and that you could finish that game. He could have finished that game. Instead, he got pulled because, he's starting to let things up now. And, you don't want to get in the mentality of the fact that, hey, he just went 8 1/3 innings here, and now he could be the one that actually blows it because he's a little tired. When he wasn't tired, he was still dealing. That guy had a good hit on a good pitch. That's all that was. But ultimately he brings somebody else in. They only let up 1 run instead of 4, which was great because we won the game. We wind up splitting with the Braves. But ultimately, I feel that, like I said, that 104 pitches is really closer to 200 pitches. He threw 200 pitches that day. So what's the difference of another 15, 16 pitches? What is the mentality that you have to go to your bullpen, that our starting pitching is the one thing that's doing really well for the Phillies right now. But because your script is telling you that you need to pull this guy after 88 pitches or 100 pitches or however many pitches, when, it wasn't so long ago that there were 3-man rotations, not 5. That these guys would pitch 120 to 150 pitches in a game, and they would still be worthwhile 3 days later. Now it's a whole different world.
And they were getting hurt a whole lot less than they're getting hurt today. Right? Because, again, pitchers are programmed not to pitch today. That's what's wrong. From the time they get into the minor leagues, they're programmed to pitch X amount, as you said, X amount of pitches a game. And guys start, they get to that limit, and they may be pitching really well. And the first time they get in trouble or they reach their pitch limit, they're looking in the dugout for somebody to come and get them. That's why I like the Garrett Coles and the Max Scherzers. Somebody comes out to get them. They walk a guy to start the 7th inning after throwing 80 pitches. They're like, get the hell out of here. Right. What do you think you're doing? But there aren't enough of those guys. Most guys are looking to get out of there because that's not my job. My job's done. I pitched my my 100 pitches, my 90 pitches, whatever it is. I just walked the guy. They're coming to get me. I'm out of here. That's their mindset. The mentality, as you said, Gene.
I got to
And
tell
I
you,
can't
but
stand
there's a strategy behind it. In the case of Nola, he had a 4-0 lead.
There's no.
You want your bullpen to have a cushion. Let's say they left him in for a couple of more batters. Let's say the next batter gets an infield single, hypothetically. You figure it's not Nola's fault. You don't want your guy coming in from the bullpen with the tying run on. You want him to have a cushion, so if they get a hit or two off the reliever, the team's still going to be okay. So that's basically what Girardi was doing. He was giving the bullpen a cushion.
Yeah, but I don't like the fact now that because the rules have changed and you have to pitch to 3 batters now, that the moment that you come in, so if you have one man on base, you are going to face potentially the tying run at a 4-0 game. So ultimately, if you don't have your stuff and you walk that first batter, and then you have that infield single, where it's like a swinging bunt and everybody gets to move forward, and now you got bases loaded, and here you haven't really even done nothing. You barely warmed up. You had one at bat where you walk a guy that may have been a battle or whatever. It could have gone 7-8 pitches. Now you had a swinging bunt that nobody made. Now you're at 12 pitches in an inning, and you're facing your third batter, and he has the potential with one swing of the bat to tie the game. When ultimately you had a guy who just pitched 8 1/3 innings, went 104 pitches in there, and literally you pulled him out because he let up a double on a good pitch. Actually, the guy hit a good pitch, and ultimately now you pulled him out, and you bring in not even your closer because you want to save him for the Mets. You bring in a guy who's been getting beat up by this team. Well, luckily he did not get beat up that day, but he did kill the shutout. And I feel like the shutout might have done a little bit better. The fact that he only let up 1 run, all right.
Shutout doesn't mean that much unless it's one pitcher getting the shutout. It's not thought of as a shutout if it's more than one pitcher.
Well, that's why I felt like he should have gotten the last 2 outs. I think that there would have been no doubt in my mind. Hey, you had Zach Eflin the other day, had 11 strikeouts, 11 strikeouts, and he's getting pulled. And then, of course, they lose the game.
Who's the best pitcher in the Phillies staff, Pags? Who's the best pitcher?
I would have to say Wheeler right this second.
Okay. Whether it's Wheeler, Nola, or I forgot the other guy's name now.
You have Zach Eflin. You got
yeah. And who's the highest paid guy on the staff?
I think Wheeler, right?
Wheeler's getting $23 million a year. He signed 5 years, $115 million. The Mets wouldn't match it.
This is my biggest problem, and it goes back to what we've been talking about through this whole conversation. The guys you pay the most money, the best pitchers on your staff, who you pay the most money, pitch the least important part of the game. When the game's on the line, you don't want them in the game.
Well, you're investing more in them, Keith, so you baby them a little more because they're high-priced investments.
I don't care. Who was the highest-paid pitcher when Catfish Hunter was pitching? Catfish Hunter. And he went out there expecting to finish every season.
Look, Schertz and DeGrom on the injured list. You have to handle these guys with care. I mean, you big money pitchers. Sure.
If you don't want to win games, do that. I mean, again, it makes there's no logical sense to what they're doing. If you're don't pay the guys the money then if you're worried about them getting hurt and losing it.
And I don't know what Nola's previous high pitch count was for this season, but
104 pitches we're worried about. Who cares what it was?
No. Let's say his high was 80 pitches. I'm just throwing a number for the heck of it. He's exceeded that by over 20 pitches. You don't want to kind of push the envelope. I mean, the season's still got a while to go.
Yeah, but we're not counting his pitches warming up. We're not counting his pitches before the game. I mean, he's throwing. We're counting 104 pitches of in-game pitching. Yeah, but that's still. He's got at least 40 pitches of warm up in between innings because they pitch the ball 4 times before they throw it down, and then you got at least 100 pitches that they're in there just warming up, going through the whole motion and such like that. They may not, and then they have their long toss and such. I mean, there's so much that goes into these arms here that, I think of Roy Halladay, and just what Roy wanted to come out. Roy would never come out, it's, and then these pitch counts that have started to dictate how managers are going to manage are a problem. I can't wait for a manager to allow their starting pitcher to throw 125 and 130 pitches. Now, do you want them doing that every game? Maybe not. But ultimately, like I said, when it comes in the playoffs, I am, as a Philly and part of the Phillies, they're going to have to go to either a 3 or a 4-man rotation and use one of their starting pitchers in the bullpen, because that's the one that you're going to be able to trust. Because as of right now, our starting pitching is where our pitching strength is. That our bullpen is back where it was the last couple of years, where we're going to just blow leads and lose games because they just do not have the strength there. And until you start to get somebody in there, you're going to have to, when it gets down to it, you're going to have to go to a 4 or 3-man rotation for these playoffs and put some of the guys in, the starting pitchers in the bullpen and start to use them. I mean, when I think of Suarez was in the bullpen, for a lot last year and was the best bullpen guy. They brought him out to be a starter, and he wound up being one of the better starters at the end of the year. He was competing against Wheeler with, I think he had 8 wins in a row. But ultimately, if we made it to the playoffs, he was going to have to go back to the bullpen because they didn't have the bullpen help. And that's the problem that the Phillies have now, I feel like, that they just don't have the bullpen, that they do have the starting pitching.
Hoskins and Schwarber have to start hitting. That's what the problem is.
I wouldn't be surprised if Hoskins gets traded. I have mentioned this before, and it's not as much of a hot take, but I feel like that out of all of the assets that we have that are worth anything, that Hoskins is probably one of the stronger assets, and that you could get back to quality, relievers. And I feel that and maybe, maybe somebody in the minors or what have you, obviously don't want to get rid of anybody in the outfield because our outfield is really tough right now. But ultimately, I feel that you got to give up something to get some relief pitching in here. And what we have right now, Familia still can't hit, he doesn't even trust him anymore to bring him in. Norwood, you can't trust him anymore to bring him in. I don't know why you would even have him on this 25-man roster. You got to send him down, get some of his mechanics figured out or whatever, or start to figure out what type of pitcher he really is. Bring up some of these kids. I don't know the answer, because it's always, hey, you don't want to bring him up here too early because you don't want him to get, his mentality shot because that major league hitting is, overpowering his pitching. Truth of the matter is that you get a rush when you're up, when you're having your cup of coffee with the big leagues, so ultimately I feel like that rush should overpower the mentality of you getting beat all the time. That, I'm just, you get.
They won't get anything for Hoskins that could help the Phillies, that could help them this year. They could deal with a team like the Baltimore Orioles, get a couple of really good prospects. They can make a good deal, but nothing that'll have an immediate impact.
Well, and I said that too, that you got the Reds that you could look at too, although, the Reds are scoring 20 runs a game now. If you're going to score that many runs, you're going to win those games.
That they should spread that out a little bit, because they're going to need that over the next week, probably. You can't. The problem too is with making trades this year and going forward with the expanded playoffs, less and less. There's going to be many more buyers than there are sellers. So you're only going to be able to buy from, as Jack mentioned, from the Orioles and the Reds and teams that are horrendous anyway. So who are they going to have that's going to help you in the short term? There's not going to be that many guys available. There'll be some, but not enough to go around to all these teams that think they're contenders because of the expanded playoffs, which I certainly am not in favor of either. But that's a different topic for another day.
You make a good point, Keith. There are more teams that are contenders than we realize because of the expanded playoffs.
Yeah.
I was looking at the standings a couple of days ago, thinking which teams are the biggest disappointments. And one of those are the Toronto Blue Jays. They're like 3 games over 500, but I picked them to win the World Series this year. And while I'm saying what a disappointment they were, I'm saying if the season ended, they would sneak into the playoffs. So they might actually cause damage. And then you take a look at the team like Seattle, who's been dreadful, a real disappointment. But, you know, it packs with the Phillies are right there. They're not that far out of a playoff position. They just have to tighten up. And Boston Red Sox got off to an awful start. They could find themselves back in contention soon.
And that's the problem, though. Teams will fool themselves and think they're actual contenders for playoffs. And after that, I get anything can happen. A lot of them are going to be just, you know, kidding themselves. But that's the way it is today.
Well, but then you look at, okay, who were some of the teams that you would be able to start to trade with? And because there is this expanded playoffs, you have to start making these trades earlier.
Yes.
You can't wait. You can't wait to go down to the trading deadline.
Yep.
You know, so I think of like the Nationals, even the Cubs.
Tigers.
Like the Cubs are
Tigers.
You know,
Disappointment this year.
Tigers, Mariners, Orioles. I mean, anybody from the Athletics or even the Guardians down. But you know, when you look at the Guardians, they're still only 4 games back from the wild card. At what point is it too much to try to get back to the wild card race? You know, it's like the Reds are 10 games out from the wild card. So it's
shocking. That's shocking to me.
Are you willing to pay? That's the thing. A guy like Marcus Stroman signed as a free agent with the Cubs. I mean, the Cubs aren't going anywhere. They might be glad to dump his contract. Would a team be willing to pay a contending team thinking he can be a piece that could help them?
He's a likely trade candidate. Yes, I would say those are the types of guys, you know, that you're going to get. But are they really going to put you over the top? I don't, you know, there's a reason he's been with 4 teams in 4 years. So, you know, look at the Tigers. You know, you talked about Hoskins specifically. I don't know that Hoskins is the best fit for the Tigers, but they're a team with a couple of good bullpen guys that, you know, they're going nowhere. Fulmer's pitched really well out of the bullpen for them. And there's another guy, I can't put my finger on his name right now, but you could get guys like that from those types of teams. And again,
and you have to get them earlier. You can't wait till late in the season or, you know, as you start to get closer to the deadline, because everybody's going to be trying to make those moves.
Yeah.
You know, and like different than hockey, I feel that baseball, you know, you almost got to be ahead of the curve here to start to do what, you know, because you think about that, that's what the Braves did last year. The Braves made adjustments earlier in the season, you know, rather than waiting to get to the trade deadline. So at the trade deadline, they didn't need to make any moves, but they were already kind of trending upward, and then ultimately, you know, propelled their way to a World Series title.
Yeah.
Where are the Eagles, the Phillies going to be able to do something like that? I don't know. I think that there's a lot of things that have to go right. However, you know, I was never a big fan of the Schwarber signing. You know, I felt that he was a career 230, 240 hitter who happened to hit a number of home runs last year during a time where the team was competing. You know, so ultimately he had a good run last year that got him a lot of money, and that what we're seeing from him right now is what we have. But nobody's going to trade for him right now. You're not going to be able to give him up. And unless we were down as the Reds or something like that, where somebody would want to maybe try to get him. Rhys, however, is a little bit more manageable in terms of money. I feel that he does have a lot more longevity and that it's worth an asset. Does that mean you have somebody like the Yankees who would possibly that have the back of the bullpen pitching give up to maybe help their batting? I know that he goes hot and cold.
That's not a position for him with Rizzo at first base.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's
DH is clogged, you know, so.
Well, and that's the same problem that the Phillies have right now, because, you know, Harper, you can't take the bat out of his hands. Obviously, he's crushing it right now, but he can't play the fields. So, I mean, he would have been out completely if they didn't go to a DH this year.
You know, to your point about teams making moves earlier, I think the old deadline was June 15th. And I think that's where you're going to see the teams really start to look to say, I got to make a decision by the middle of June, whether I'm in or I'm out. And teams are going to make moves earlier, to your point, Jamie. And Who knows? Maybe they'll move the trade deadline up again at some point. You know, I always liked that June 15th deadline before they moved it back, and it's been a long time now. But it doesn't mean you can't make moves after that. So it's not like, you know, the deadline is really an arbitrary thing. I mean, you can still make trades after it. So
right, it was that whole waiver thing, which I think is the most ridiculous. I think of it the same way as in basketball now with the buyouts. We're going to buy you out of your contract so that you can go somewhere else.
Nearly everybody passes through waivers anyway, so it's not a huge deal. It's, you know.
Now, so a few weeks ago, Pags thought on this date he'd be talking Philadelphia 76er basketball. Are they going to win tonight, go to the finals? It's, you know, but it's the Celtics and the Heat tonight. Did you guys give the Heat a good shot at extending this to a 7th game?
I think the Celtics wrap it up tonight.
I kind of agree. Yeah,
you know, Pags, when you're the one that said the Celtics made their move of playing too well too early a while ago and they would run out of steam. It hasn't quite happened.
I did. I thought that there was a point where I thought they may have been peaking a little too early. Obviously, they aren't. So,
but they're doing it basically with the same cast that they had a year ago that went out against the Nets in 5 games. Is this a good lesson for the other NBA teams? Just stay the course. Keep the guys you have and let them just play better. You don't have to make moves like in the case of the Sixers. Leave the team alone. Hope Harden comes to camp in condition, shows enough pride, gets back somewhat to his old self, and just stay the course. And Tobias Harris could play well. Just play well with the guys you have. Just let them play well. You don't have to make artificial moves.
I think we've seen the best of James Harden, though. He's not getting back to where he was.
No, not completely, but he could be a better James Harden than he was this year with the Sixers.
Yeah. I got a next question for you, actually, talking about the NBA playoffs. Do you root for Jimmy Butler?
I don't root for any person or team. I may pull for a team a little bit. Like I said, but I don't root for any team outwardly. Yeah. My thought is that I was happy that, not happy, but I preferred losing to the Heat than going up against Boston, because I feel like Boston would have swept us. You know, especially with the way that everything's coming out right now, and this whole Embiid is, whatever. Like, I know that the media is making a big deal where it looks like where he said, hey, Miami needs another star. And next thing you know, everybody's like, oh, Embiid to Miami. Embiid's not going to Miami. Embiid is just, Embiid needs a filter on his Twitter so that when something goes out, somebody can say, maybe this isn't the best way of putting this. Maybe we should go about and say this a little differently so that it doesn't look so immature, which is what I feel like that was. I felt like him saying, him saying anything is like a little bit immature, a little bit of whiny. And he can't be whiny right now.
I find it interesting, Keith. You mentioned Jimmy. Why do you mention Jimmy Butler? I find that kind of interesting.
Only because he came, he was with the Sixers, and they never were able to get over the top with him either. And I thought they should have kept Jimmy Butler in Philadelphia myself. And I thought Jimmy Butler was on a mission this year, and I thought the Heat were going to get to the final once the Bucks went out, to be honest with you. And Jimmy Butler had played pretty well through the playoffs. And I just wondered if Pags, because I thought I remembered, I may be wrong. I thought you were a Butler guy when he was with the 76ers. So that's why I kind of thought.
I was a Butler guy. I felt that I liked his fire. You know what I mean? I liked the energy, and ultimately when they made the decision, because the Sixers front office made the decision on keeping Brown and Simmons over top of keeping Butler, and playing Monday morning quarterback. Actually, at this point, we're like Wednesday or Thursday morning quarterback. It's obviously a bad decision that was made. That had they had the foresight to say, yes, we need to do this now, that this process could start to finalize now that we've got two really strong pieces of the puzzle working together, like playing together. And now we just need to be able to build around them. Now, would we have gotten Maxey in the mix? Possibly, because obviously he was a late round pick, and there was no tournament to be able to see people start to excel or decel, up and down the rank. So it might have been possible, but ultimately they would have still been able to have a third person come here. And that be a true big
second guessing. It was the right move at the time. Ben Simmons' upside was unlimited. He thought to be maybe one of the big future stars in the NBA. So much potential. You couldn't move on from Ben Simmons at that time.
I remember there were times when we thought that Ben Simmons and LeBron James wanted to play with each other. Wanted to play together. And I think about Ben at LSU and the fact that he did not want to go play in the tournament at all, that he decided to sit out the tournament. And of course, LSU without him had no chance whatsoever and lost in the first game of the tournament. And how every other superstar who gets put into those types of situations wants the ball and wants to play. And I feel that moment in time, obviously picking Simmons number one, and, obviously he had the pedigree. His father, Lionel Simmons, was a great player. And, that all of those things fall into, when you think of Kobe Bryant, and obviously his father was a great ball player and he grew up with the basketball in his hand.
Did he go to LaSalle? Didn't he go to LaSalle, Lionel Simmons? No.
Lionel Simmons?
Lionel Simmons.
You used the word great loosely, Pags.
There was a Lionel Simmons that went to LaSalle.
Pags, you used the word great loosely. Joe Bryant was a good player, nothing special.
Nothing special, but what he was able to do was coach at a very, very young age the fundamentals of basketball to his son. And ultimately, that's where when you become a 4 or a 5-star chip that they talk about in college, that has to start when, literally you come out of the womb and you've got a basketball in your hands or you have a football in your hands. The reason why that some of these players have pictures of them as a baby with a football in their hands is because somebody put it there. Somebody started to get them thinking about this at a very young age. So that when you have Bryant, when you have Kobe Bryant, who literally he played right down the street from me. We were in the same Central League, and he was just literally a man amongst boys in high school. There was a reason why he was able to not have to go to college and was able to get picked right away by the Lakers, coming right out of high school. He was the last year that they were able to do that. After that, you weren't able to do that anymore. But that you had to go to 1 year of school. But ultimately, he had all of that stuff instilled in him. And Simmons did not. Simmons didn't have that same mentality. He didn't want to put in the work. He wanted to be the megastar. He wanted to be on TV. He wanted to have all the fancy cars and the girlfriends, but he didn't necessarily want to put in the work to be as great as he was. Where Kobe, that's all he did was put in the work.
You're saying he got that from his dad?
No, I wonder where his father. Yeah, I wonder where his father was in all this.
Yeah, I think they were estranged at that point in his life where that development point in his young life. I think, I'm not positive.
So I mean, and that's where I feel like some of those things, maybe that's it. Maybe that's where he learned to quit from. Unfortunately, if he was estranged from his father, he maybe thought his father quit on him.
Yeah.
And if his father quit on him, that's where he learned how to quit. Yeah. And ultimately, that never leaves. It becomes the mindset. Oh, I'm going to quit on my team here. I'm going to quit on my team here. I'm going to quit on my team here. And that's what he's done. He's done it in LSU. He did it with the Sixers. He kind of did it with the Nets. You know, just quitting on his
When he
team.
came back, I think
He
it's
didn't get a chance to quit. He never played.
he has some emotional issues that have to be taken care of, because I don't think he didn't play this year because of a physical injury. So maybe he's suffering some type of depression. No matter how much money you get paid, it's a tough one when someone's undergoing some type of depression. That could be it in Ben Simmons' case, you know. So I actually have compassion for him if that is the reason.
Well, and I can understand that. Obviously, depression takes many forms, and it's nothing to just poo-poo past.
Right.
That being said, he's got the people around him that he chooses to have around him, and those people are, you know, playing to his whims. They're saying, "Oh, you're the man. You're the right one here." Nobody's getting in his face and saying, "You know what? You got to start to think about, you know, what it's like walking in that other man's shoes." You know what I mean? He's too busy worrying about how his shoes fit, let alone him, you know, let alone what anybody else is perceiving or thinking of him as. When all the statement was that Doc said he just didn't know. He didn't know. He couldn't answer right away. And he felt that was a big, you know, how dare you talk bad about me? And, you know, it's just, and that's what did it. That's what caused him to quit. He quit in that game, you know, by passing the ball, being under the basket. All I got to do is dunk the ball. Just think about how much stuff would have been different had he not passed that ball and just dunked that ball. You know, literally the whole world would have been different had he not passed the ball away. And that's the big. They may not have won that game, but the look on how he could have progressed in Philadelphia as a player, as a human being, might have changed so dramatically. And like I said, they didn't have to win that game. He just had to make that shot, and he didn't, and he chose not to. And it was a consistent way of thinking. That's quitting, and that's what it is. He quit on his team, and then he literally quit on his team. And it's not the first time he's done it. So he did it with LSU, same thing. Yeah, and these guys depended on him.
And afterwards, he, you know, again, you touched on this before, Pegs, and it's a story with a lot of these young budding stars. It seems to happen in basketball more than others, but it's in all sports, that they surround themselves with sycophants who just tell them, you know, you're the best, everybody else is wrong. And I'm sure after that game and that decision that he made that changed the course of his career and course of the Sixers season, they told him he was in the right then too, guaranteed, because they don't have the right voices in their head, or in their ear, voices in their head. Maybe there's those too. I don't know. But the right voices in his ears are just, yes, men don't get you anywhere in life, nowhere.
Right. And I feel like that's part of the problem. That's part of the issue with Ben Simmons. And like I said, depression could play a part of that. You know what I mean? That, you know, listen, it's hard. The only person that can make you happy is you.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that within you, if you need other people to be able to qualify you, and that's kind of what some of these young players have, that they get all this money, they have these people around him that qualify them, that make them feel important and make them feel good. And ultimately, when they start to trail off, you start to get rid of them and you start to bring in other people that are going to make you feel good, because the money is what pays them.
Which is, they need a guy to tell them to take a step back and look at what you're doing, not just say good job. You know how many bad decisions I would have made in my life if I hadn't run them by my wife because I thought I was right. I wanted to make an emotional decision. And she goes, you just need to slow down. And, you know, you need that person who doesn't just tell you you're right. Go ahead, jump. You can't be wrong. Just slow down. I mean, again, it's ruined a lot of careers. You know, I hope it doesn't ruin his. I mean, he's still got time to fix it. He's a young guy.
I mean, I heard, you know, it was funny. I watched on TikTok the other day, somebody got a Shanghai Tigers jersey with Ben Simmons' name on it. So, you know, who knows where he's going to be playing.
Maybe.
But, You know, ultimately,
he's too much of a talent. If the Nets give up on him at some point, someone else takes a chance on him.
I don't know that they can.
Too much of a talent. Maybe for what he's getting paid, that would be the only thing that would prohibit it.
Yeah.
But I do know that the NBA definitely put a pin in this, and they're going to bring this up. They're going to have the Ben Simmons rule. The Ben Simmons rule is going to be made in the next CBA, that if your player quits on your team, at that point, you are not going to be obligated to pay them.
Good.
And that's going to be in these contracts. That when these players are starting to, ultimately, the inmates running the asylum here in basketball has started to weigh down the sport in general. Ultimately, I feel that this is going to be a ploy by the owners to try to get some of the power back. And they have sat quietly. The NBA has not said much about this whatsoever, but it's happening more and more frequently, and they've been waiting for the right time. Well, the right time has finally come. And because Simmons is not going to get that $20 million back that he put a grievance about, and because of that, because the NBA again is paying attention, they want to know everything that's doing. And I feel like it was the NBA that screwed up this process anyways, because they made us take the Colangelos, and now we'll have the burner accounts, and more worried about your ego than you're worried about the team. And
well, with all what slipped under the radar with all the NBA playoff talk, and we just talked about Ben Simmons, Zion Williamson is cleared to play next season, and he's the one to keep an eye on, because you don't know whether New Orleans is thinking, if we could get the right package, we would move on from Zion. And Zion, if he stays healthy, I mean, he's an elite talent. He's going to be one of the best players in the NBA if he's on the court. He's already proved what he could do on the NBA level. He just hasn't had the long body of work. And he's a difference maker, Zion Williamson. I mean, I would love him to somehow wind up on the Knicks, but I just don't see the chips there. You don't want to give RJ Barrett. He's your biggest chip of all. And I want Barrett to be a career Knick if possible.
Yeah. The Knicks and probably anybody would have to overpay at this point to get Zion Williamson, I would think. And that doesn't mean somebody won't do it, but
I feel like he's getting a super max or max contract from.
I meant overpay that way, Jamie, and also in players to get him, right? Because you got to trade for him, so you might decimate your entire franchise. You might have a great player, but nobody to put around him.
Well, and I think that the Hornets are going to, he's going to die in New Orleans there. They don't have it, and they're not going to have it. And, it's not a very good franchise to be a part of, at least from what I've heard. And then when you watch TNT, they kind of confirm the same situation that, that's just, it's a bad situation. They got to pay him because they have to at least seem like they care enough to be able to put the type of team that they want on the court. But the truth of the matter is that he's not Allen Iverson. No. You can't put 5 scrubs around him, or LeBron James, and put 5 scrubs around him and him be the type of presence on the court that's going to get you to a playoffs.
I'm going to tell you something, Pax. This sounds mind-boggling, I know. But if Joel Embiid says he's absolutely fed up with the Sixers, absolutely demands a trade, and he means business, sending him to New Orleans for Zion, that could be a heck of a deal, because if Zion's at the top of his game, he's on Joel Embiid's level.
Well, they're not. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know about all that, but we'll cross that bridge if we ever have to come to it.
No, you're going to have to cross it, because Joel Embiid is going to. The signs are he's getting fed up, and he's not going to be a Sixer more than one more year unless the Sixers make a serious run for the NBA title next year.
Yeah, I think that's wrong. But that, again, I've been wrong before, but you never know.
He's fed up already, Joel Embiid.
Well, he's fed up, which the Sixers ought to be fed up. He can't be on the court for playoff games. What about the Sixers in this whole thing?
Right. And so, again, getting knocked out in the second round is getting old and tired.
Yeah.
But that being said, our 2 hours always goes by really quick, especially when I'm filling in for Max. So, Keith, I really do appreciate you coming on and talking with us today. And Jack, it'll be Jack and I tomorrow again, where we have our debate show. I'm trying to get somebody else on. We might have a surprise guest. I'm trying to work out those details. So
you had a word count on me. That's why you brought Keith in. I mean, I could have talked more like Aaron Nola, but you brought Keith in. You know, we got the win. We got the win.
There's a script. Jack's cut off after 100,000 words. Jack can't.
Yeah.
Well, but I got to cut him off now because we're over our 2 hour time limit. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in.